Okay, so let's continue with the lecture. Okay, so we have covered all the organelles. Okay, we have covered on the cytoskeleton, and then for today's lecture, we are going to continue. We also have covered the extracellular structures, which are the cell wall, and then we look at the cell junctions, right? So cell wall is in plant kan. So kalau in animal cell we have the extracellular matrix. So we also have looked at the cell junction, which it has four types of cell junction, which we have the plasmodesmata for plant cell, and then we have the tight junction, desmosome, and also gap junction, okay, for animal cells. And then we enter into the subtopic, which is specialized tissue in animals, okay. And then we have covered all the different types of cells, okay, all the different types of cells based on the shape of the cell, the layer of the cell. So if the cells are layered as single layer, the term we use is simple. Yeah, so if many layers, the term used is stratified. Okay, but if one layer, but the cell of varying heights, okay, and then that is pseudo stratified. Okay, so and then the shape of the cell the shape of the cell can be flattened, okay, which is squamous, or in brick like columnar, or in cube like, so cuboidal. It depends on the function of the cell. Okay, so and then we look at the epithelial tissues, which includes the glands. So gland we have here, the gland are the tissue that make up the gland is responsible to secrete secretions. Okay, so we have here the goblet cells, which can be found in the cells lining the trachea, which function to secrete mucus to trap contaminants from the air that you breathe in. And then we have the endocrine gland, which is a function to release hormone into your blood circulation until it reaches your target organs. Okay, so the cells must have receptor to receive the hormone. And then we have here the other gland, which is the exocrine gland, which is one of its function is to secrete enzymes. Okay, so enzymes such as salivary glands. Okay, so it secretes saliva, which contains amylase, right? And then we have here the sweat gland, which secretes sweats onto your skin. So we have exocrine gland. And then okay, so let's move on to this next type of tissue, which is the connective tissue, right? So connective tissue mainly binds and support other tissues. Okay, so made of three elements, which is the ground substance, the fluid. Examples are fluid. Okay, and then we have fibers. Examples are collagen, and then we have cells. Examples are blood. The blood cells. Okay? So these are all the different types of connective tissue. Loose connective tissue, and then we have here the fibrous connective tissue, the bone, adipose tissue, which is it stores fats here. Okay, bone is here, and then we have cartilage, and then blood. Okay, so let's look at each one. Okay, so the different types of connective tissue. The first one here, we have loose connective tissue. Okay, so as you can see, it consists of collagen and then elastic fibers. It is the most widespread, okay, found in the skin and throughout the body. Okay, so and then next one, we have fibrous connective tissue dense with collagenous fibers. Okay, so found in tendons. So tendons which attach muscle to bone. So if you look at here, so it attach muscle. So these are muscles. So muscles to bone. So this is the fibrous connective tissue here. Kat sini dia punya labeling pointing dia missing. So this one should be here. Okay, so here for the skin, here I can lose connective tissue, skin. So tarik kan awak punya labeling tu. Okay, so blood is in these blood vessels. Okay, so okay, so tendons kan. So ini tendon tadi. This one is tendon kan. So muscle to bone, and then we have ligaments kan, which join bones, which connect bones at joints kan. So ligaments kan. So bone to bone lah kan. So bone to bone, bones to bones. It involves the ligaments, right? And then we have bone. Bone, mineralized connective tissue. It consists of cells, so we call it as osteoblasts. Okay, so bone forming cells deposit a matrix of collagen. So it combines with calcium, magnesium, phosphate ions into a hard mineral within the matrix. So these are the composition of your bones. Okay, and then another type of connective tissue we have here are blood. Okay, your blood. So blood. It has a liquid, it is a liquid extracellular matrix called, sorry, blood, it has plasma. Okay, blood, it has two major composition, the blood plasma and then the cellular elements. Okay, so the blood plasma, it consists mostly of water and other elements such as respiratory gases, ions, proteins, can. So that those are the component found in the plasma. Can. So it has a liquid extracellular matrix. Can. So which mostly consists of water and other dissolved elements. Okay, and then the other component of blood are the cellular elements which is suspended in the plasma. So the cellular elements are your red blood cells, or we call it as the erythrocyte, and your white blood cells, or the leukocyte. So there are so many different types of white blood cells. Okay, so depends on the shape of the nucleus, right? Depends on the function of the white blood cells. So there are white blood cells that engulf pathogen. There are white blood cells that secretes antibodies, right? And also there's the platelets. Kat sini ada koma kat sini koma, letak koma kat sini platelets. So platelet, as you know, basically it involved in blood clotting. Okay, it is blood clotting elements. Okay. So these are the examples of connective tissue. All right. So next, after the connective tissue, okay, so we have another form of tissue which is the nervous tissues, which make up your nervous system, okay, which mainly consists of your neurons. Okay, so nervous tissue senses stimuli and then transmits signals throughout the animal. Signals here is referring to the transmission of electrical impulse. Okay, so from one neuron to another neuron to another neuron until it reaches the target cells. So the target cells can be your muscle that causes your muscle to contract, or the target cell can be a gland. So it causes the gland to secrete its secretions such as hormone or enzymes. Okay. So nervous tissue contain neurons or nerve cells, okay, that transmit electrical impulse. Okay, so and then another type of cells that part of the nervous tissue is the glial cells or the glia. Okay, the function of glial cells or glia, it is to support the neurons. So one way of supporting the neuron is that the glial cell will provide nourishment, or it provide insulation, as we have learned. I'm sure you already know the structure of neuron, right? So neuron, it has the cell body, it has the axon, kan? So and then it has the synaptic terminal. So the axon part of a neuron, so it is insulated. Okay, it is insulated by myelin sheath. Okay, so myelin sheath. So the myelin sheath is made up of Schwann cell. Okay, the Schwann cell is an example of glial cells. Okay, and then another function of the glial cell is to replenish the neurons. Okay, so this is the structure of neuron lah. And so it has the dendrite parts. The dendrite part here. The dendrite part is a part of neuron that is receiving electrical impulse from the previous neuron. Okay, and then the cell body. The cell body is the region of neuron that has most of the organelles. It is where you found the nucleus, the all the important organelle within the neuron cells are located in the cell body. The nucleus, the Golgi apparatus, the rough ER. It is where the cells has all the organelles. Dekat ya kelas. Hello. Hello. Lima belas. Itu dia. Okay. Okay. Terima kasih. Bye. Okay. Okay, so let's look at okay. So these are the nervous tissue, right? Okay, so then okay, next we have the muscle tissue. Okay, so the muscle tissues, so it is responsible for many types of body movement. Okay, so the cell contain actin and myosin. The one that we have looked at earlier in this chapter, we have the actin filament and myosin filament. In between the actin filament that causes your muscle to contract. Okay, with each other, enables the muscle to the contraction of actin myosin and actin and myosin enables the muscle to be able to contract. So basically there's a few types of muscle tissue. We have the skeletal tissue. So the skeletal tissue, the contraction of skeletal tissue you can control. Okay, but there's this type of tissue, we call it as the smooth muscle. So smooth muscle, the contraction and relaxation of smooth muscle you cannot control, because this smooth muscle can be found, for example, in the wall of your blood vessels, in the artery, for example. You cannot instruct your blood vessels to dilate and constrict, right? Depends on the condition of your body. So the wall of your alimentary canal kan, your digestive system, so it has smooth muscle for the control of peristalsis. Okay, so in food to digest your food. Okay, so and then the contraction of smooth muscle you cannot control, relaxation and the contraction of this muscle. And then the heart, it consists of the cardiac muscles. So cardiac muscle is it is a special kind of muscle where it can generate its own electrical impulse. Okay, to cause your heart to be able to pump. Yeah, to pump lah, to pump blood. Okay. Apa istilah dia? Systole and diastole. Kan, systole and diastole. Okay, so the cardiac muscle, so the cardiac muscle forms the wall of the heart. Okay, the shape of the actin filament, myosin filament inside, it is straighted. Okay, straighted. So has similar contractile properties. They have intercollected disc composed of gap junctions. Okay. So gap junctions, this one here is where we can find the gap junction between the cardiac muscle. So gap junction, it allows ion to quickly pass from one muscle to one muscle to from one cell to one cell to another cell, so that this helps in the speeding up the electrical impulse. Basically, how does electrical impulse is generated? It is due to the movement of ions, okay, in and out of cells. Okay, the movement of ions in and out of cells, ions that involve, for example, the sodium ion the potassium ion, the chloride ion that has charges. Okay. So basically positive charge. In order to cause electrical impulse to be generated, ion has to move in and out of cells. Okay, so in order to increase the speed of electrical impulse through the cardiac cells, okay, through the cardiac muscles, is through the gap junctions. Okay, so that so that interconnect cells to cell, which relay signals between them. Relay signals is the electrical impulse through the flow of ions through the gap junctions. Okay. So to synchronize heart contractions. So and then we have here the smooth muscles, it like striations, okay, so found in the wall of digestive tract. Okay, so your alimentary channel lah, okay, so that involved in the process of peristalsis to move your food, okay, from the esophagus into your stomach and throughout your small intestine, large intestine, right? So and then the urinary bladder, okay, and then the arteries, vasoconstriction, vasodilation, kan? So according to the need of your body metabolism, your body temperature, for example, and then other internal organs, okay. So responsible for involuntary body activities. So you cannot control the contraction of this smooth muscle. Okay, peristalsis in small intestine, churning of the stomach, and constriction of arteries. Okay. And then we have here the skeletal muscle attached to bone and tendons, and then responsible for voluntary movements. Okay, skeletal muscle fibers formed by the fusion of many cells, resulting in multiple nuclei in each fibers. Okay, so arrangement of contractile units, we call it as a sarcomere here. Okay, so and fibers gives the cell a striated appearance, a stripe appearance. Okay, so this one, the contraction of skeletal muscle, obviously you can control. Okay, so those are for the okay, for the animals tissue. Okay, so animal tissue, you just have to know just to recap, the shape of the cell, and the shape, squamous, columnar, cuboided, the layers of cell, simple, striated, and pseudostratified. Okay, stratified and pseudostratified. And then you have to know the examples of epithelial tissues. Okay, and then the examples of glands, endocrine, exocrine, goblet glands, examples of connective tissues, all these. In this one, you have to match, yeah, with the correct tissue and the correct structure lah. Kan? So blood is in here, kan? So we have the adipose tissue, the cartilage, okay, and then we have the nervous tissue, kan? And then we have the muscle tissue, okay? Muscle, cardiac, smooth, and skeletal. So let's move on to the specialized tissue in plants, okay? So three basic plant organs. So basically all plant, it must have all these three components, these three organs. The roots, okay, the roots, the stem, okay, and then also the leaf. Okay, so each organ is composed of three basic tissues, okay, which is the dermal tissue, the vascular tissue, and also the ground tissue. Okay, so let's look at for each one. Okay, so this is the cross section of the roots, the cross section of stem, and the cross section of leaf. So each of these organ, it must have these three tissues, dermal, vascular, and ground. Okay, so dermal is the outer tissue layer here. So each one must have the outer layer. So the dermal tissue system for the leaf, the dermal tissue for the stem, the dermal tissue for the roots. Okay, so the leaf, the stem, and the root must have the ground tissue. Okay, the yellow part here. Okay, so must have the ground tissue, and then the vascular tissue. So the vascular tissue is important. Why? Because it is where the tissue involved in the transportation of water and food. Okay. So each tissue form continuous tissue system throughout the plant. Okay. So dermal tissue. So this is the dermal tissue. For example, we have here the epidermis, and then at the epidermis layer we can find the stomata. Okay, stomata is where, for example, respiratory gas will enter and exit. Kan? Depends if involve photosynthesis, carbon dioxide enters. Kan? Carbon dioxide enters, oxygen release. Kan? As the byproduct of photosynthesis through the stomata. Okay. So and then ground tissue, there's three types of ground tissue: the parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma, the yellow part. Okay, the yellow part here. Okay, in this yellow part of each of these organ. It has the ground tissue, which can either be parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Okay, and then we have the vascular tissue. There's two types, which is xylem and phloem. Okay, right. So let's look at for the dermal tissue first. Okay. So dermal tissue system, plants it is the plant outer protective covering. Okay, protective covering, the outer layer. So it is because it is the outer layer, it functions as first line of defense against physical damage and entrance of pathogen. It prevents pathogen from getting into the plant. Okay, yeah. So and then it is mostly, it can be made up of non-wood for non-woody plants. Okay, for non-woody plants, herbaceous plant lah. Okay, so for non-woody plants, single tissue called the epidermis, a layer of tightly packed cells. Kan? So herbaceous tissue herbaceous plant yang apa macam rumput ke macam tu kan, apa herbaceous awak cari lah, herbaceous, okay. And then for those that have that are more woody plants, woody plant, so the periderm replaces the epidermis in the older region, kan. So this is the epidermis is the softer layer of the outer tissue. Tapi yang keras punya, it is replaced with periderm. Okay. Periderm consists of cork, cambium, and secondary cortex. Okay. So and then waxy epidermal coating, the cuticle. Okay, so the cuticle here prevents water loss. Okay, so in root, water and mineral absorb enter through the epidermis of the root hair. Okay, so kalau epidermis selalunya cells dia nipis kan, single layer. Okay, single layer, so that it allows easy absorptions of water and minerals into the roots. Okay. And then in shoots, guard cells are involved in gaseous exchange. Guard cells are the cells that makes the component of stomata. Okay, so this is stomata, so it consists of guard cells. Okay, so and then we have the trichome. Here can specialize epidermal cell in shoots, which reduce water loss and also reflect excessive light. Okay. Trichome. So and then so the outer layer is the dermal tissue, and then we have here the vascular tissue. Okay, so the vascular tissue system are embedded in the ground tissue. Okay, so these are ground tissue and ground tissue. So and then we in the ground tissue there is the vascular tissue. Okay, so the function of the vascular tissue is to facilitate the transport of materials. Okay, depends on the type of vascular tissue. Water for xylem, and then for the transportation of sugar, for example, is through the phloem. Okay. So provide, and another function of the vascular tissue, it provide mechanical support. Okay, so both xylem and phloem are continuous throughout the plant body. So it means that this vascular tissue is continuous from the roots to the stem to the leaf of that plant. Okay. So and then okay, so let's look at on the first type of vascular tissue. Here we have the xylem. Okay, so the function of the xylem is to conduct water and dissolve minerals, okay, upward from roots to shoots. Okay, roots to the leaf of that plant, shoots to leaf lah. Okay, so two types of conducting cells. We have the trichiates. Mana gambar ni? Okay, trichiates. So trichiates, it is the main conducting cells of the gymnosperm and ferns. Okay, so occurs in clumps in xylem throughout the plant body. So function, conduction of water and nutrient minerals. Okay, so and then and then it provides support. So these are the trichiates. Okay, so the green structure here. Okay, main conducting cells in gymnosperm and ferns. Okay. It is to conduct water and also minerals. And then we have the vessel elements. Okay, so these are the vessel elements. Okay, so main conducting cells for angiosperms. So function, conduction of water and nutrients, minerals. Some is it can provide supports, but it is more efficient than tracheids in conduction. Okay, so as you can see, the size is more bigger. Okay, so it has perforations, kan, so that water and also minerals can easily pass through from one cell to the other cells, right? So these are the xylems, kan. So and then for the phloem, kan, for the phloem,
Ito,
yeah. Bagi saya habiskan dulu
yang
lecture.
gymnos.
Ha.
Okay.
Bagi saya habiskan lecture dulu sebab boleh sebab dah ni sikit lagi. Okay. So phloem, okay. So phloem transport product of photosynthesis and other nutrients, okay, from where they are made, usually the leaf, okay, so to other parts of the plant. So as you can see, so these are the structure of the phloem, okay. So so it is made up of two specialized cell, which is this one here. You have the sieve tube elements, okay, sieve tube elements. So it is living but like nucleus. The cells are alive, but it doesn't have any nucleus or other organelles at maturity. So the end of these cells, they have sieve plates. So this is to allow what? Easy conduction of sugar from one cell to the other cell. So they are perforated. Okay, so they have sieve plates. Okay, and then there's the companion cells here. Okay, so the cells are living cells. Okay, have cytoplasmic connection between the sieve elements. Okay, the sieve tube elements. So cytoplasmic connection here are the plasmodesmata lah. And plasmodesmata. So the function of this sieve tube element, it is because it has all the organelles. These cells are capable of carrying out cellular respiration to generate energy in the form of ATP, provide ATP and materials to maintain the sieve tube elements. Sebab kalau sieve tube elements ni dia tak ada banyak organel kan, so dia tak ada nukleus, tak ada organel-organel yang penting untuk membolehkan sel ni survive sendiri. So it has to depend on the companion cells. Okay, so it assists in moving sugar into and out of the sieve tube elements. Okay. So and then we have here for the ground tissue system form the bulk of the plant. Okay, so ground tissue, it forms the bulk yang kawasan kuning tu tadi, composed of three types of tissue. So the parenchyma, collenchyma and also sclerenchyma. Make sure you know how to spell this term correctly. Okay, so this tissue can be differentiated from each other by the cell wall structure. Okay, so this from this table here, as you can see, it differentiates between the three types of ground tissue: parenchyma, okay, the collenchyma, and also the sclerenchyma. So let's look at each one. So for the cell shape of parenchyma, okay, so they are diametric cells which are oval, okay, oval, spherical, or polygonal in shape. Okay, for the collenchyma, okay, so they are usually circular, oval, or polyhedral. So they are usually circular in shape or oval in shape. Okay, and then for the sclerenchyma, it has various type of shapes. Okay, so the shape they have various types of shapes. There's two types, which are the fibers and sclerics. Okay, so and then for the cell wall for the parenchyma, so parenchyma, the cell wall is thin. Okay, the thin. Okay, so they have parenchyma, they have thin cell wall. Okay, thin cellulosic cellulosic cell wall. Okay, and then collenchyma uneven thickening on the primary cell wall. Okay, the primary cell wall kan. Kita hari tu kita tengok the you have the plasma membrane and then you have the cell wall. Yang paling dekat dengan plasma membrane tu adalah yang secondary cell wall, yang paling dua tu is the primary. Okay, so primary, so uneven thickening on primary cell wall. Okay, so for the sclerenchyma have both primary and lignified thick secondary. cell wall. So as you can see, the secondary cell wall for the sclerenchyma, it is quite thick, okay, lignified, secondary cell wall, and then on the outer, on the the most outer layer cell wall is the primary cell wall, okay. And then for the parenchyma, they have abundance of cytoplasm, okay. The cytoplasm is quite a lot. And then for the collenchyma, they have they have the cytoplasm. But for the sclerenchyma, they have no cytoplasm. Okay, they have no cytoplasm. And then for the parenchyma, the cells are living cells. Okay, they have nucleus. For the collenchyma, because they are living cells as well, they have nucleus. But for the sclerenchyma, they do not have any nucleus. So that's explain on why the cell doesn't have any cytoplasm. So basically, sclerenchyma are dead tissues. They have no organelles. Can So they have no nucleus, no vacuoles. They have no intracellular space, right? For the parenchyma, they have intercellular space. Okay. And then for the collenchyma, the intercellular spaces are absent. And then for the parenchyma, basically they are packing tissues. Okay, they are packing tissues here. For example, okay, so all soft part of plant, leaf cells, root, pit, cortex, and medulla array. Kalau bahagian-bahagian tumbuhan yang biasa tengok ni, yang alive, yang untuk makan whatever, so they are parenchyma. Okay. So for the collenchyma, dicot stems, dia pada batang-batang. Okay, batang-batang. Contohnya dicot stems, petiole, petiole, epidermis, absence in monocot and roots. Okay, and then collenchyma, dicot, hypodermis, bundle sheath, all this in the seeds. Okay, pulp of fruits, kulit buah ni, kan, kulit buah. It is made up of sclerenchyma. Okay, shells of walnut, coconut, kan, pits of cherries and peaches, bahagian tumbuhan yang keras-keras tu, kan, yang bahagian yang keras yang nampak dia macam mati tu, those are made up of sclerenchyma, kan. So shell of coconut, sclerenchyma. So function of the parenchyma as food storage, kan, food storage, kan, saya cakap bahagian yang kita bahagian yang kita boleh makan, macam itulah. It has oil droplets, water and salts, photosynthesis, green chloroplast, secretions, resin, tannin, sugary nectar, and hormones, because they have cytoplasm, and they have nucleus, they can produce its own food, kan. So they have food storage, they function as food storage. Okay. And then collenchyma provide tensile strength, elastic support, mechanical support, flexible structure. It can also carry out photosynthesis. So sclerenchyma, protection from stress and strain, mechanical strength and support. So bahagian keras tu, okay, mechanical strength. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 2. Okay, so is there any question yang tadi? Fahmi?
Madam, what is meant by gymnosperm, ferns, and angiosperm?
Dia jenis tumbuhan, pokok yang macam kayu-kayu balak tu, kan. So angiosperm. Okay, angiosperm, flowering plants. Okay, angiosperm are a group of flowering plants characterized by presence of flower, pokok yang ada bunga. Okay, and specialized reproductive structures such as carpels and stamen. Asalkan pokok tu dia ada bunga, dia are angiosperm. Tapi gymnosperm, gymnosperm, gymnosperm ni dia lagi simple lah tumbuhan dia. Okay, gymnosperm are a group of plants that produce seeds, not enclosed within the ovary of fruits. Gymnosperm ni macam ferns, kan. dia boleh jadi woody plant juga kan, woody plant. Boleh tengoklah ada example dia. Gymnosperm ni tu pokok yang macam lebih-lebih awal exist berbanding dengan angiosperm. The seed producing vascular plant whose seeds are not enclosed within ovary. Angiosperm yang ada bunga. Kalau gymnosperm yang dia ada cones. Okay, macam tu. Okay. Boleh? So itulah dia. Ada lagi soalan? Any more question? Boleh tadi Fahmi?
Boleh madam. Thank you madam.
Okay. Okay. So kalau tak ada, kan? Kalau tak ada soalan, okay, chapter 2 kita dah habis, kan? So make sure for chapter 2, you know all the organelles, all the structure, the function of the organelles. You know, you should know how to draw the organelles, okay, the labeling of that organelle. And then the cytoskeletons, the structure, the function, the composition. Lepas tu kita ada yang the extracellular component of cells, the cell wall, the ECM, semua tu lah kan. And then the tissues and the different types of animal and plant tissues. Okay. So just to remind for test, dia akan cover chapter 1 and also chapter 2. Okay, so dia punya format soalan dia sama je macam dalam dalam punya book tu. Dia ada MCQ, dia ada short answered questions, kan, structured questions. So kalau untuk test ni nanti dia total markah dia adalah 50 markah yang akan contribute kepada 20 to 30%. So 20%. Okay, 20%. 50% kan awak punya assessment. 20% test, okay. 30% is your continuous assessment, post-step questions, 10%. Your mini project, 10%. And also your biodiversity assignment, another 10%. So 50%. So test is really important for you to jagalah markah dia. So you make sure that you understand the chapter 1 and chapter 2. Nampak macam senang, tapi perlukan awak punya kefahaman yang betul-betul faham. Okay. Okay. So kita end our session dulu. Nanti minggu depan kita akan sambung dengan chapter 3. So untuk tutorial S61 saya jumpa you all dekat bilik tutor lah. Kejap lagi. Okay class. So thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Okay.
Thank you, madam.
Alright.